1, 2, 3.
While our weekly shows are edited to time for broadcast on public TV and community radio, we offer to our members and podcast subscribers the full Uncut conversation. These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters.
We are in what today's guest calls a dark night of our national soul. Violence is targeting our women and girls and all those who identify as female. We're witnessing an epidemic of those who never make it home and are never heard from again. The Arctic ice is melting, and record numbers of our young people are losing their dreams to the doom scroll of the internet. So how do we find our courage if every generation has a story to tell? What's this one's? In her newest book, our guest today reminds us that unusual things can happen at the intersection of time, form, place, and passion, and it is just possible that our story is unfolding exactly as it should. Those lines come from Girl Warrior on Coming of Age, the latest book from the celebrated writer Joy Harjo. Written as a guide for young people, especially young Indigenous girls, there is a message in Girl Warrior for anyone looking for help finding their way. And that, it seems to me, is all of us right now. Certainly me, which makes me very happy to welcome Joy Harjo to our program. Harjo is the author of countless books, including 2 American Book Award winners in Mad Love and War and Crazy Brave, and she was the executive editor of the groundbreaking When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through, a Norton anthology of Native Nations poetry. Harjo's a saxophone player and performer, a visual artist, a member of the Muscogee Creek Nation, and served 3 terms as the 23rd Poet Laureate of the United States from 2019 to 2022. It is my incredible honor and pleasure to welcome Joy Harjo to Laura Flanders and Friends. Welcome, friend.
Well, I'm glad to be back. It's been years.
Way too long.
Many years.
And thank you for all of those lines and for this book. I took the liberty of lifting from your words to describe the nation, the moment that we're in as I'm feeling it. How would you describe it if you were to do it afresh today? How would you describe this moment that we're in?
Well, we're definitely in a transformative moment, but we're in many layers of transformative moments, everything from the environment to the political, to racial, to it's all spiritual. I mean, all of those. It's really about a spiritual transformation, and we all take on this story, and we take on breath, we take on a story, and I have to think about it. I have to think about it like that we're here to grow spiritual muscle, and this is quite the time. We were given quite the opportunity to come in at this time. This is what I tell younger generations too, that they came in with exactly what we needed to get through and to learn. I mean, we are here to learn, and the learning continues no matter how young or how old you are. It's, it's important that you keep open.
Well, this book, as you say, what started out as a guide for young people, but it feels as if it became much more. What happened in the writing?
Yeah, I never know what's going to happen in the writing. I have a 3rd memoir due, and I'm trying to figure that out, but I can't overthink it. I just have to go. And this book came about because I travel about quite a bit speaking, especially in universities. That's my major. That's my major touchdown places, and Native communities. And I speak to young people, and so I wrote this thinking about who they are, what they're going through during this time, to maybe give assistance because of things that I've been through. I can't, nor do I want to tell anyone what to do, but when you get to my age, you've got some kind of wisdom. You've had teachers. I've had many teachers and mentors along the way, and so I just wanted to pass this along. And as I wrote, I did start to realize that, well, this is a coming of age moment, for democracy. It's a coming of age moment for humanity. Are we going to choose kindness over cruelty? It's so, in a way, this book has turned out to address this age that we're all in together, because coming of age just isn't becoming an adult, but it's all of the kinds of becomings as we move toward self-knowledge, which is also community knowledge.
Well, you write in the book in a variety of ways how challenging transformation can be, sometimes physically painful, often spiritually so. Our young people, well, our people are seeing, all of us are seeing tremendous rates of despair. Suicide rates have gone up something like 36% in 2 decades, especially among young people and kids of color, indigenous kids most of all. How did you find those young people, and how did you connect with them?
Well, one of the stories, I think it's the third one in, called Mystery, was in the 80s. I was called up to the Wind River Reservation because the suicide was epidemic. And so much that it even was in the national news, and natives rarely get into the national news. And so the community people called me in because they know the power of language, and they knew that poetry could be helpful to the young people. And so that story is about going up there and engaging with the young people and thinking about too what they were going through. And it's interesting. I love what happens when you're in the middle of creation, whatever it is, and things come. And I always say, thank you. Where did that come from? And I started thinking about how adolescence, or even a period like we're going through now in this country and the whole earth, is, you're a caterpillar in your knowledge base, sort of in your awareness, and you're eating and taking in information and stories, and then the next thing you know, you're wrapped up in them, and it all starts to mesh and deteriorate, and there's chaos. Like right now, there's chaos. We don't know what's going to happen. We never know. You don't know from one moment to the next what kind of insanity is going to erupt from the house where there is supposed to be a leader in residence. And so that's that chaotic soup. But then in the stories, what emerges from that is the butterfly. And that's how I was equating in that. I equate in that story, going from being a child to an adult is like that. That teenagehood, coming of age period is like that. But it's like that right now in our collective community.
Well, I want to believe that we're shedding all those little legs and growing wings, and that it's just painful. So I can relate to the discomfort, perhaps. And I guess that brings me to your question about how you found your story. I think if I remember from your memoirs, you wrote about, I think you put it as escaping to the warmth of Santa Fe to a native school. Not how people normally talk about those native boarding schools, but for you, yours had a focus on arts, and you were always an artist, a visual artist and a music maker. Describe that for us, if you would, that moment in your life, that period for you.
Yes, I mean, the residential or Indian schools could be pretty brutal, with large graveyards attached to them. And there was even some of that. I went to the Institute of American Indian Arts when it was a Bureau of Indian Affairs school, and they were doing something then that had never been done before, which is arts. They brought in some of the finest native and non-native artists, and you had to, as a student, it went from 8th grade to 12th and 2 years postgraduate, you had to apply. I applied with drawings, and I got in, and it saved my life. Because, I mean, can you imagine it's sort of like the Fame School in New York, where you're around your own kind. You're the weirdo, but so is everybody else, and everyone has a similar story. And we came from native communities all over the country, even as far as from Florida to Alaska, to make art with people who were making art. And that was my home. That became my home, and that really saved my life. Yet we weren't allowed to speak native languages. there was still residue, from the previous Indian school, previous Indian school incarnations. But this one was, you know, this one was, I guess, a kind of bridge.
You talk a lot in the book about the challenge of sort of surfing, bad verb, but the internet. And it does seem to me that a lot of people go to the internet for what you found at that school, for community, for people like them, for their own folks. How do you weigh the sort of advantages and disadvantages of everybody in their palm of their hand, or so many people being able to connect to the world?
I think that a lot of the young, at least what I've noticed going on the internet, because I go on there too, is that they're not people aren't often who they say they are, or they remake their image with effects or so on to be somebody who they think they should be. I think that's the main difference. At Indian school, we were just who we were. We weren't dealing with filters. We weren't dealing with trying to fit in with people we didn't even know, in that community. And when I think I wrote about this too, when those images like the Reels and TikTok started invading my dreams, I value my dream space, which is it's my creative space too. It starts breaking it. And when in my dreamscape, which I like because of I appreciate because of the timelessness and the way you can move creatively, when my dream space started acting like TikToks, little short pieces, I thought, I deleted TikTok. And yet I know there's so much on there. There's so much valuable. A lot of people make their living on it and so on. And every once in a while I'll dip in, but I cannot. It is so addictive. I think it's even more addictive than sugar. It's one of the most addictive things.
And designed to be that way, to make money off us all.
Yeah, we're losing grandchildren. I mean, we've talked about some of our grandchildren who they're not interested in higher education of whatever sort. I mean, there's all kinds. You don't have to go to a university for education, but they're so locked into the internet that they don't want to get out of the house.
So how do we find our stories? How did you find yours? And another part of your book, I think, that's very powerful is, we've been through this period of transformation and new storytelling. And I was actually in Cherokee. I was in North Carolina with the Eastern Band of Cherokee. And in Cherokee, they have a new museum. Or they have the old museum.
Yes.
And they're redoing it. And they're redoing it with these they are not done yet. It's a process. And they're putting these questions on the wall. And the questions say, would you want your people represented by the relics that they left, hundreds of years ago? And what relic would that be? And what about these drawings? They're asking people to ask new questions about this history, at the same time as they're telling this painful history. And I guess one of the things I have in my mind is how to balance our own story with our ancestors' story, with what we bring into this moment, which can feel heavy but also helpful, as you say. So how do you...
Or impossible. Impossible, because you think about it, there's contradictions. Every one of us is a contradiction. I think was it Chris Christopherson, we're partly truth, partly fiction. And anyway, there's such contradictions. I mean, how you can't make peace. There's things I finally had to realize through the years is you can't make peace with everything. That there is you cannot, like, there are people in our families we can't talk to because they're not going to listen. And are we going to listen to them because they're supporting somebody who, is going down the street and taking the grandfather of friends who has never lived in another country and dragging them off and sending them to a country they've never been to.
Never to come home and never to be heard from again.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not sure because I am about, I think, oh, everybody has a story, and all this, the whole first part one is about a dream, where all the stories exist, but it doesn't mean that the stories aren't the same. We need a diversity of stories. I mean, there would be no story at all without challenge. There would be no story without contradictions. We wouldn't even be interested. Without that, we would just walk away with disinterest because, it's the human thing. We're taken by fresh sounds, ears, stories, what's happening. And that's the bone and the muscle of being human is stories. That's what we do. I remember going through years ago thinking about what use are human beings to the ecosystem. And I really couldn't find a reason that we were here except that we make stories, that it's important we express gratitude and that we're helpful to the other beings, to each other and the other beings who live here.
So how are we doing on that front?
Mm, I think most people, I think I've been all over the world. I haven't met everyone, but I've been all over, and I think most people really want the same things. They might go about it in a different way. And I don't know how you deal with that with people who demand, and we see a lot of that here with certain religions, especially in the state of Oklahoma, who demand that everyone think like them. And they will enact laws to force that, to force, and I don't know what you do with that, really. I mean, we can stand up and then there's a point to where you start feeding it because you're giving them all the energy. And yet you need to acknowledge it, but continue to make a story weave that includes the children and includes, is about making a place of so that everyone has fresh water, so that, everyone has enough food to eat. You're not stealing from the poor to give the money to people who already have too much money. In the Muscogee tradition, if somebody is accumulating and lives to accumulate, they're seen as being mentally ill.
Well, maybe that is the illness we are trying to shake off right this minute.
Hmm. Yes, it's kind of inbuilt. It seems built into the system. And maybe this is why we're going through this, is to all of us to understand, to see it within ourselves, and to change.
As we say on this show, this is the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it. From our recent conversations with Dolores Huerta on courage, or with the federal workers blowing the whistle at HUD, or with the congresswoman and the Marine veterans standing together against the militarization of our cities, we seek out stories that can inform and even inspire. We're proud to stand strong, but we can't do it alone. Independent journalism like ours only survives because people like you believe it matters. If you value bold reporting on grounded solutions for a fairer future for all, please consider making a donation today at lauraflanders.org. And thank you for standing with us at Laura Flanders and Friends and for helping to keep independent journalism like ours alive and kicking. So give us tools. I'm hearing, we need our stories and our ancestors and some of our relatives to be maybe seasoning, not too much, not dominating the flavor of our lives.
True.
And we have to be open somehow. You have a beautiful part in the chapter Feeding Your Spirit where you write the songs plant themselves more easily when our bones and minds are more pliable. And you write often about being open to what comes and what comes from inside. I don't know how you get there. We're both in a moment of cold right now. I feel like I'm clenching slightly. But but sometimes what's happening around me makes me clench too. So how do I be pliable enough to let the song settle?
Man, and that's where there's anxiety. I get it once in a while. Everybody's dealing with it in some way when there's a kind of system, when you know that it's like going into a community and there's a leader. You can tell this in any business you go to. You walk up to the counter and you can tell immediately by how people are acting what the leadership is like. How kind, how the business is run. You can see evidence around it. But when a business is being run helter skelter, then you see it. You see it in the employees. You see it in the interactions with customers, with what is put out. You don't rest. There is no, you cannot rest. So we're in a situation like that right now, where a kind of helter skelter situation, and that can be anxiety provoking. And the one thing I found is listening to heartbreak songs. You know, there, yeah, I just figured this, and it calmed me out because I've been on the road a lot too, and I'll be in some hotel or someplace I don't really feel, and I'll put those on, and I find that I don't have to take any pill or anything. There's something about it that just, has calmed me out. And being out in land, being outside, unplugging will do it. Just unplugging will
You have a
help, and then being out, yeah, with the trees and the animals.
I thought you were going to say go to the water, which you talk
Yes,
about in the book, and there's a beautiful part of your book which either I could read or you could if you have your book there.
I have it right
I
here.
was thinking of page 41, starting these days, going to the end of that
Okay.
little chapter.
Okay. Those days we might be tempted to retreat to the internet story feed to calm the waters of the anxiety. Yet, in the unending scrolling story field on social media and the internet, we are witness to disheartening stories that instead feed anxiety and plant in us distrust and fear. There are also positive images and stories, but it is the negative that more easily lodges in our consciousness and stirs the waters. I was once reminded by the old ones that when the waters are stirred up in a pond, stream, or river, you cannot see anything at all. When you are disturbed and cannot find rest within your mind, then stop stirring the waters. Thank the earth for her embrace, for holding you up. Feel your rootedness. Imagine the way the earth smells after a rain. Breathe in blue sky clarity. Breathe out muddy confusion. Let your thoughts float. Do not follow them. The waters will grow still and clear. When the waters are still and clear, you can see into the situation with a more comprehensive point of view. You can see farther, deeper. As water's nature is to flow, it will all pass, all of it.
I think I'm going to be reading that passage daily for a little while.
Yeah, I think I need it too. I write things and then I forget what I've written, and I thought, whoa, I needed that.
I didn't know you were an outrigger canoeist
Yes. Uh-huh.
on top of everything else.
Yes, I went to Hawaii. Wilma Mankiller asked if I was having a nervous breakdown, but or something. She was joking. But I've always loved the ocean, and there I got to be. The water was a healer for me, and I got to be in the water.
You didn't always play the sax, but music seems like it's playing a healing role with you too.
Yes, I always kind of wanted to, and I grew up with my mother was a songwriter, a singer, and we had some of the best there. Tulsa is a music town, and they've been calling it Little Austin too, but it's Tulsa, and it's been here. And we had the best country swing band musicians at our house jamming out, and the bootlegger lived next door, which made it convenient. And but I didn't pick up a saxophone till I was almost 40, and started with music. And now I have a new album coming out from Folkways. They said I'm not supposed to say the name yet, but it'll be out from Folkways in March, and it was produced with Esperanza Spalding.
who has been a guest on this show in our history too.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't wait for that. You have another book of poems coming out too. Is there anything you want to read from those?
Yes, I'll read a poem called Overwhelm. Again, addressing addressing these times, and I wound up in a little hotel room in Gunnison. It was in Gunnison, that's right, Gunnison, Colorado. And I remember noting on the elevator there was a guy, he was really big with a case of beer, and I thought, that's trouble. Well, he wound up in the hotel room next to mine. So here's the poem, Overwhelm. There was a door between the men arguing and me in the small town hotel when I returned late to my room. Then they went quiet, which can be more dangerous. I became stealthy in my mind. Bad spirits find doorways and stupor. I used to seek lift from the overwhelm and drink. I'd ride over the meadow of doubt flowers to the field of miracles where anything was possible in the blur. I never drank alone. It was the circle that drew me from the haunting to the waters. We remembered songs we thought we had forgotten, and we were beautiful beyond belief. The profane danced wildly with the sublime. How ridiculous now to think we were happy in the quick shelter we sought from truth. I now understand how a whole country can drink from the waters of illusion and go down, and how easy fury can turn to gunshots, then give way to torpor. I needed a respite from the story, then as in now. I counted the steps from midnight to home, to your arms. The dark skies of eternity were lit with small fires. They showed me the way.
That question of how you find your courage or find your way obviously is a big part of your multi-page message to the people reading this book. But if you were to speak to our audience today, and maybe specifically to fellow members of the Muscogee Nation, what's your advice? What's your suggestion for how you find your courage?
I find relatives and people who inspire me, and I listen to them. I may not have their words, I have their presences. Some of them are relatives. Some of them are plants. Some of them are poets. Some of them are artists. It's important to feed your spirit. It's important to feed your spirit that in that way.
Who's
to keep
fed
going.
yours?
Where do I start? I think about June Jordan's poems, of course, have been coming up quite a bit. I was very lucky to come of age as a poet when I did. With Audre Lorde was a mentor, Adrienne Rich, Ishmael Reed. I mean, I've had so many mentors. I just responded to an email. I've had an ongoing correspondence with my first poetry teacher at the University of New Mexico, David Johnson. And then the children, there's a group of, I watch these little girls that have just turned about 2, and they're incredible. I'm thinking it's going to be okay when I see these little kids because of what they're bringing in. They're really intelligent. There's a wisdom about them, and they're watching. It's like they're already teenagers and they're only 2 years old. And I think, okay. And they inspire me. Yeah.
One of the things about June Jordan that I was lucky to benefit from too, was that example of how to be fierce and also funny. Desperately fierce. And also catch you unawares with humor. Some people say that's a indigenous trait. Is it?
I think it's the trait of anybody who's gone through hell. That's how you survive. I mean, I love comedy and comedians and watching them. And one of my best friends was, he's gone now, was a comedian. And they're often the wisest, really wise people. But it's that finding the humor in the most horrible moments gives you literally lift. Yeah.
Lift our
And
spirits, lift our eyes off the phone, lift our eyes out of the doom scroll. Um,
yeah.
I love that you talk about curiosity, and you end the book talking about curiosity. And we end every episode by saying, stay kind, stay curious. You say, give chase, be curious. You want to speak about that? I loved that idea.
Yes. My husband turned me on to that, particularly curious, because I can get into, like all of us can get into corners of things, but he said, if you're curious, he reminded me that, just be curious. And so when I've gone into situations that before I would have a tendency to react to, I kind of stop and think, okay, what's behind this? What's around it? Walk around it in my mind, and then take myself totally out of it, and then come back in. It's sort of like having what do you call it? Oh man, they lift up and fly around. What do they call
Like a
them?
drone?
Yes. Okay. It's sort of like, I'll go back. It's sort of like having a drone, a drone that can go through time. Not only do you go around the situation with, drone-like, but you can go through time with it. And somehow getting that perspective, then you're not so stuck. You get perception can come with that curiosity.
So how much effort do you think we have to put into understanding, as you put it, the occupant of that house that is supposed to house a leader, and some of his followers?
Well, we have to know what's going on for real, but we have to keep in mind a vision. And I think democracy was a kind of collective vision that came out of the Haudenosaunee, but also the Muscogee Nation has been called one of the oldest democracies on the planet. And so if you keep in mind a vision, and then if there's a collective vision, that helps also. Because a collective vision towards unity or harmony in the end is going to will work more than something that's breaking it apart. It may not happen exactly when we want it to. I don't know. I keep thinking about when I've been, I speak to audiences, I'm reminded, and I remind the audience sometimes, and I've got to remember the word. There's something that happens when people are together, united together, and their hearts start naturally beating together in rhythm. It's natural, scientific fact. And I was thinking about that and how in a system, in whatever system it is, our earth systems work towards harmony. And sometimes destruction can be working towards harmony. Not us destroying, but there are some things in our system that are no longer useful. And sometimes the way to get to that happens in ways that are, again, we get back in the drone. There's a larger view. But in the middle of it, we have to stand up for we have to stand up for what's right. We have to. I mean, you can't stand and watch a neighbor starving or it's the cruelty. We have to, and to realize that ultimately we were created by a creator who loves diversity, created a planet of diversity, a universe of diversity, and that's the universal law is diversity. Universal law is love and connection. We're all connected. That's why that image of Earth, when it was first released by NASA in the 60s, brought about terms like the ecosystem, or because we could see that we are a being. And there was light. There was light coming from the planet, from within the planet, from within the life here that we are a part of.
Now, the people that first published that picture thought, this is going to change the human race. We're going to see that we are all one. Didn't quite work out that way.
No.
And we're in a different era, this generation having a different relation, a sort of tense relation, I think, to empathy. Going back to those young people to whom you dedicate this book, or that this book is focused on, how do you recommend to people to be with them, to reach them, to offer a pathway to them? I think you talk about a doorway into adulthood. We need mentors. How can we be mentors to those young people who I simultaneously feel so excited about and so scared for?
Yeah, at the same time. One way I connect is basically through the arts, and then supporting the arts, supporting them in their efforts to think and to engage and to be curious.
That word again.
Yeah.
Invite them.
Yes. Invite them and let they're welcome. Let them know that that's their essential nature. Even if you're going into STEM, or whatever. Curiosity. I mean, that's, if you marry that with love, compassion, I guess I would say compassion and gratitude. I mean, what else? What else do you need?
So I'll end with the question I ask all of my guests, although I almost began it this way, but it has to do with the story of these times. You're a time traveler. If you were to look to the future, I don't know, 25, 50, 100 years, what do you think is the story that future will tell of us now?
That's a hard one, but looking at these children and looking at what's possible after seeing the intensity and the ferocity with which this breaking apart has seemed to have suddenly come about, is that it will be resolved in a way. It will be resolved in a way that we thought we couldn't quite imagine at this point. Like, I don't like to use the word renaissance because that's so, but sort of a spiritual, that's what is a spiritual renaissance.
I can hear an ocean wave rocking in the background, or maybe
That's
with your
right.
heater.
That's good. It didn't come on until just now.
Has anyone ever asked you about your tattoos on your hand?
Oh, yeah. I used to get asked. I'd do a really serious performance and ask for questions, and that would be the question. Yeah.
So what is
No,
it?
no, this is, I get asked about it. This I got in Tahiti. I lived in Hawaii 11 years and hung out with the cultural people. And my friend Keone Nunez, who helped bring back Hawaiian and Pacific tattoo art, recommended Ro'onui to me. And I could see it on my hand. And so I got it done there. I have a few.
And what is it? What is it on your hand?
It's different symbols. They look very similar to Muscogee symbols, and that's one reason and there's very Tahitian symbols woven in. It's related to water, of course, creativity, water spirits.
I love it. Is there any other thought you want to leave us with? Any question, anything you want to make sure we know about? For one thing, you have another book of poems and the album that you mentioned. You just keep giving us gifts, Joy. Thank you.
Well, I have that and a children's book coming out from Penguin Random House next, is it September? I forget, they gave me the date, next year, called Gathering the Light. The art is incredible by this Anishinaabe artist, Mangishik, and what is his last name? Paula. Anyway, It's wonderful art. And then the cover, I started painting again after 50 years. So the cover of my new album is a painting that I finished, and I've got finishing another one today. So, yeah.
We'll let you get back to that. Joy Harjo, thanks so much for being here with us on Laura Flanders and Friends. It's been a real delight.
It was so great to get to visit with you again, and I hope it's not so long.
Me
It must
too.
have been 20 years.
At least,
So,
at least. Yeah,
okay.
the book speaks beautifully to these complicated moments.
Well, thank you. I hope I put it out to deliberately do a job, so
It does it. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the full conversation. These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters. Please join our members now by making a one-time donation or by making it monthly. All the information is at lauraflanders.org. And thanks again to all of our member supporters.